Okay, so this is basically the design I'm doing for this pedal plane. Is to take a regular bike running gear, turn it upside down and backwards, and then the tire will drive forward. Okay? And then the person will be sitting here, pushing the pedals this way, driving the wheel this way, which would propel it forward. Now this is kind of my mock-up, where I got it turned the seat stem upside down, so I can kind of get that solidified in my mind. But this gives me an extra sort of bit of distance there. I would have to make up my own chain to make that happen, which still could be done if I need the extra cranking power from these longer cranks. But I think what I'm going to do is use some of these donor pieces, take this bike, cut it off, turn it upside down, and pretty much use the drive unit as it is. And then for the sides, for the two landing gear wheels, I'll be using these 12-inch tires, and I'll mount them up in the front forks from a donor bike, this one and then that one, and hopefully those are pretty symmetrical and we'll have everything, you know, lined up so that we can put the seat over those wheels. Hopefully as it all comes together it will be more evident as production goes on as I put things together. Okay, here's what I've got so far. It's kind of starting to get a little dark out, so probably going to be calling it in a little bit. But this is the basic frame design with, you know, seating above the wheels. Then I'm going to have to put a tail wheel in somehow to do the steering. But I put these little hooks from the handlebars, and the frame will be able to take the weight of the body back there. And if I can get these foot pegs to work, that'll allow me to put them up here and then rest the frame on the front like that, so that it will carry the weight of the body, and then of course the weight of the rider will go back here somehow. And if you wonder, you know, what is this thing sticking up here? What's that doing there? You know, I'm pretty much making this up as I go along. I didn't even think of these things until, you know, that tube, which is the top tube on another bicycle, it was just barely in there. So I cut off the handlebar, parts of the handlebar, so that the handlebar goes inside that tube, and then I'll be able to clamp up just nice in there. And then using those two adjustment points, I can actually, right now anyway, move it in and out, potentially to give you a little bit of change in the seating distance from that. But that's enough for today, and we'll see where we go from here. Okay, today I finalized some of the places, welding them together. I also added some bracing under this cross member, and then of course down here to make that stronger. And I actually did pedal it a little bit, just kind of sitting on this makeshift thing here, but that's where I'm going to build the seat. And then if I could just find my tail wheel, I set that thing aside, and I must have set it too far to the side. Alright, today I installed this tail wheel, so I'll be able to steer it. I'll have to work out the steering mechanism to move that back and forth. But that's all hooked in, and when I was trying to ride it, this gear, that sprocket, was just too hard. I couldn't even start it up on a hill. And so I took that little sprocket off the 12-inch bike, and I had to drill a hole right there for that post to go in, because the sprocket on the other bike is driven from a hex shape that's carved into the center of the hub. But oddly enough, there was a silver outline of where they would have put a hole if they had a post there. So I just used that as my guide for that. And then of course the chain was too long, too sloppy long, and I had to remove the master link, which no bike comes with a master link. And so I had to essentially go and get a kit to remove it, and it's got all these fancy things that push out the pin and everything. This thing right here, well, you can do it with that, I suppose, maybe. But when I was a kid, we always just filed off the rivets on the top, and then you just use a screwdriver to pry the link apart. And that's what I ended up doing for the other 3 posts on this chain replacement, and put it back together. The master link on this is a little sloppy, but it's going to work. And now that I got that done, I can apply proper tension. And I did try riding this a little bit with this new sprocket arrangement, and it seemed to go okay. I'm not going to be setting any speed records on this, but when I was on a hill, I could not move this bike at all. So that sprocket makes it a lot easier to pull than that big one down there. I don't know if it's, what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 links that I removed from that. So it's 6 teeth smaller on the drive side, which is a huge difference when you compare the ratio of that gear to that gear. Not quite 1-to-1, but it's getting pretty close. So that should do my propulsion and the start of my steering. There is my nifty makeshift seat for now to test out some things. More later. Alright, this is going to be a short segment on how I'm making the seat. So the first thing I'll do is I actually machine these Chinese elm into little 3/8 sections, and they will go on there. The first cut I made was to that's number 2. Where's number 1? There's number 1. And then of course once I get the first cut for the final fit, they're going to be numbered and go in there specifically. So in any case, that's what's going to happen, is these will be put down, and then when I glue them initially, I'll put a screw in to hold them in place. And then when that all dries up, I come back and I drill holes to put these plugs in. So I'll have an all wood surface rather than that metal piece. And that'll allow me to use a sander or whatever to smooth it out without worrying about, you know, chewing up metal bits or breaking things. And that's pretty much all I'm going to say about that for right now. Once I get the seat done, then I will start building the airframe or the fuselage proper around that initial template or initial shape of the seat. One of these bikes, donor bikes for this project, had side pull brakes. So this is the one side, and I had originally hooked this up, you know, to use that as the fulcrum. The problem was the ratio was pretty linear. So, you know, as much as you move this end, you get the same amount of distance on the other end. So when you move it up and down, it doesn't have that much travel. So I switched to the other side where that pivot point is beyond the place of attachment, and so that gives me a lot more travel back and forth to be able to push that rod further. And then for the control stick, I had designed this thing to sort of slip onto that as a collar. I don't know if I can put that on like that. The problem is that motion is more on the top than it is on the bottom. In fact, on the bottom it's near this pivot point, so mostly what that does is just pivot. So I built this little tower. I didn't build it, I cut it off another bike. So this is a front box off of another bike, and then I can make the pivot point up here on this, which will allow that to swing fairly decently, and depending on how high above this point I go, it may or may not travel as much. And since I'm kind of on the outside of the bike or the wheel, I leaned it in a little bit, but you're going to get some clearance issues when I put everything together, so that may be something I have to work out. So I've only tacked that in to hold it, and that's probably plenty of welding for the amount of force this thing's going to get. But that will allow me to work out the different kinds of sticks I'm going to use up here, and then the clearance that I am expecting with the body to be able to make that all work together. That's enough for now.